Anyone who's watched this channel knows I am not great at steaming milk. Actually, when I usually make a latte in the morning, I use a milk frother. And this is the Aeorccino 3 and the Aeorccino 4 milk frothers are two popular models that I like using. The Aeorccino 4 was actually just redesigned, which will make this comparison a lot more interesting. We're going to froth a lot of milks with both of these and show you just how different they are. So to start, they both have a pretty similar design, cylinder shape. They're about 8 inches tall and 4 inches wide. And they fit nicely by any espresso machine or Nespresso machine out there. You'll notice the Aeorccino 4 has a stainless steel exterior, while the Aeorccino 3 has this black plastic casing on it. Additionally, the Aeorccino 4 is a lot more ergonomic design with this handle and a spout, which make it a lot easier to pour milk. Now, both of them work in the same way. There's two pieces. There's the frother, and then there's the base here. And within the frother, you'll see that there's actually a whisk inside, and the whisk has a spring on it. And this is actually magnetic, and so it sticks inside the frother, and when you turn it on, the magnet actually spins the whisk and the spring, which is what froths the milk. And there's also a heating element inside both of these too that get to about 150 to 160 degrees before the machine automatically turns off. It takes about a minute to a minute and a half total, depending on how much milk you use. They're both really easy to use. Now, the big difference here is the amount of milk settings you have on each of them. The Aeorccino 3 just has this one button in the front for one hot milk setting, and if you were to hold the button, you can actually get a cold froth setting too. Meanwhile, the Aeorccino 4, if you look at it, you'll see that there's actually 4 buttons here on the bottom for a cold milk froth, a heated milk, a cappuccino froth, and then a latte macchiato. And the idea here is that as you go up the settings, the whisk spins a lot faster and it creates a much denser milk froth. Now, I think it's time we talk about how these settings work and how the froth turns out differently. So I've actually made some coffee off screen. I'm going to bring on 2 espressos here, and let's try frothing some milk with each of them. So first we're going to do the Aeorccino 3. It's kind of lone setting. It's definitely a little more dense. So you just kind of pours out as one blob with no spout on it. You can see definitely a denser foam here. See it's separating in that bottom quarter part. Now let's do the Aeorccino 4. We'll do this on the lower settings so you can see some contrast. Actually, it's definitely starting to separate a lot more quickly here. So even though we've had an extra minute with the Aeorccino 3 out, you can see that the Aeorccino 4, the foam level is actually already higher than the Aeorccino 3. So that just tells you that you're on a lower setting. It definitely makes less of an impact. While the Aeorccino 3, the default is really just the high setting. That's really your choice here. Now, personally, I like more of a smoother microfoam, so I do like the Aeorccino 4 on the lower setting. And also, I think this makes a big difference if you're using different milks. So this right here, these are oat milks. But if you were to use a whole milk, it would come out as kind of a big blob on top. On the Aeorccino 4, when you use those 3 different hot milk settings, you can tell there's a distinct difference between each one, whether you're using that heated milk, the cappuccino, or the latte macchiato. But notice there's more foam that comes out in the higher settings. Now, there is one thing about the Aeorccino 3, and that is that the whisk, you can take the spring off it, and there's a little metal ring on the top layer there. And if you just leave the metal ring on there, it actually acts as kind of a low froth setting. Now, when I've done that, I found that low froth setting is a little too light of a froth for me. And so you kind of have the choice between quite low and quite high on the Aeorccino 3. The different settings in the Aeorccino 4 are what I really like, because I will try and do different things between maybe a whole milk or oat milk or skim milk, which will all froth quite differently. Now, one important tip for both of these is that the temperature it gets to is pretty much the same. It gets to 150 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit or about 70 degrees Celsius. And that is essentially immutable. You can't change that on either of these. Now, the texture, though, depends on how long it's frothing. So you can actually change the texture based on the temperature of the milk when you start. So if you pour milk right out of the fridge and it's colder, it will take longer to froth and you will get a denser foam. Meanwhile, if you leave your milk out, like I sort of have here in the studio where I took the milk out several minutes ago, it won't froth quite as much in the same setting. Actually, one tip is that you can actually rinse the Aeorccino under cold water or maybe under warm water, and that right there will change the amount of time it takes to froth and will adjust your settings accordingly. Also, when you look inside the machine, you can see that there are 2 level settings or 2 lines on the insides of both of them. The low line is a 4-ounce setting and the high line is an 8-ounce setting. And the less milk you put in there, the more froth you get because it'll just get aerated a lot more on that low level. So you can also kind of control your froth by how much milk you put in there. Now, there's a big warning here, though, is if you fill up the Aeorccino 3 to a high level with a whole milk, it is going to overflow. And you're going to get a huge blob of whole milk on the top. So you do have to be careful not to fill these to the high level and then use a high setting. So overall, I like the Aeorccino 4 for all those different settings and more nuances you can get, but there are a lot of tips you can do here to change these. Now, in cleaning, there's also a big difference because the Aeorccino 4 is dishwasher safe, and the Aeorccino 3 is not dishwasher safe. And this has to do with the design, with this polished steel on the exterior. Also, if you look underneath the frother, you'll notice there's no screws holding this base on of the frother, and that makes it dishwasher safe. Now, both of these, you should be rinsing them out immediately after using them. You can just rinse it out under a sink, and you'll get almost all the milk out. But I do like the Aeorccino 4. I can put in the dishwasher once a week for a nice, deep clean. So now, overall, I prefer the Aeorccino 4. It has more milk froth settings. It's easier to clean. And frankly, I just like the design of it more because it's easier to pour out the milk. At the time of this filming, it is only $40 more than the Aeorccino 3, which if you're making lattes every day and frothing milk every day, it's well worth it. Now, both these products will be linked in the description below. And if there are any other milk frothers that you're interested in, let me know in the comments and might be reviewing those soon. And as always, if you like this video, consider hitting like to support our channel and subscribe to see our future videos.